We're in the season of love, so we might as well discuss the culmination of love in this life, marriage. Marriage is a fun and special thing. I would know because I'm married. But it's also something that we have to recognize came from God. It didn't come from human beings who decided one day that they were going to commit the rest of their life to one person. In fact, as we look at history and non-Christian culture around the world, we see that the definition of marriage is totally subjective at best. If God doesn't define marriage, then who does? Who's right? Who's wrong? No one would be able to tell you. That's why polygamy is still widely practiced in the Middle East. Islam permits multiple marriages for men. Sadly, just one marriage for women. Get used to sharing. It's also why Western, post-Christian nations seem to forget about marriage altogether. Now, this isn't necessarily the next generation's fault. They don't want marriage because failed marriages are what they saw in their parents' generation. If they didn't divorce, they died in an unhappy marriage. So, because of these faulty reflections of what God originally instituted to be good, there is a collapse in trust for God's design. However, people are the problem, not God's word. When we look at marriage, we see that it's the single most vital building block to any society. People who are married have greater quality of life compared to their non-married counterparts. They live longer, healthier lives. They have lower rates of depression. They build more wealth and perform better in their jobs. They're less likely to experience poverty. And when they have kids, those kids stay in school, have fewer behavioral and attendance problems, and earn 4-year college degrees at a greater rate. The results are clear. Marriage is good for society. But how do we define marriage? Culture loves to define marriage by not defining it at all. It can be whatever you want it to be. It's not good enough. For those who say it's 2 consenting adults, why not 3? Why are you being bigoted? If someone has love to give, why would you limit them to just one partner? There's no justification that a single person can make for their personal definition of marriage. This is because humans are fickle and we disagree on almost everything. If I had a definition of marriage, why would that be better than someone else's definition? Why should my definition trump yours? Am I better than you? Of course not. That's why we must rely on a divine definition of marriage and then examine how that divine definition of marriage applies to everyday life. In other words, how livable is the definition of marriage? If my divine definition of marriage comes from Islam, we have issues. Being one of 7 wives isn't a very livable situation. Kids grow up confused. Daughters grow up trapped. And wives live humiliating experiences. However, if we examine the Christian definition of marriage and look at it through the lens of God and His Word, we see a clear, healthy view upon which society can be built. Genesis chapter 2, verse 24 states that a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. From the earliest parts of the Bible, we see God establishing His plan for mankind and marriage. You leave your home, you're united to your one spouse, and then those 2, not 4, become one flesh. This is the biblical model, and this is how we define marriage. Marriage is a one man, one woman. It's not 2 men, 2 women, or 2 women and 2 frogs. It's one man and one woman. Why? First, this is what it takes to make life. It takes one man and one woman to create life. It's a family unit. Second, when raising children, it gives them a balanced experience. Men and women are entirely different in ways that complement one another. Most women are nurturers. Most men are protectors. Of course, sometimes men and women lean more into the other role, but these men and women typically find and marry each other anyway. God knows what He's doing, and He has the children in mind. He loves children. Third, God's character is reflected equally in both men and women. We were made in the image of God. We're image bearers, and unique aspects of God are displayed in both men and women. We want to reflect God to children and to those around us. Last, marriage is ultimately a prophecy. It's a beautiful symbol of eternity. It represents Christ's marriage to us, His church. Ephesians chapter 5 describes the church as the bride of Christ. When we're in heaven, our time with Jesus in eternity will kick off with a wedding banquet. Other translations call it the wedding supper of the Lamb. It will be a celebration of the greatest marriage in history, Christ and his church. So please don't let culture confuse or mislead you. Marriage is so important, and doing it God's way is the most important. He loves you, he loves your marriage or your future marriage, and he wants the best for you and your spouse.